On today's show, we take the Athletics confidence survey to find out our belief level in the Maple Leafs after a summer of turnover. All that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. And today's show is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. Enter promo code LockedOnNHL for free white tech hat with any order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Go to birddogs.com. All right, Dave. Fun show today. We always like to do this. We do this every single year, both before the playoffs, and then there's another one that comes out right before the start of the regular season. It's the team's confidence survey. And this year's a little bit different because we've gone through a new regime change, right? We've always looked at how confident are we in the path that Kyle Dubas is taking his team on. Now we kind of have a different situation with Brad Treliving, and we've kind of seen him do some things different than we saw happen under Kyle Dubas, but we've still yet to see that true stamp be put, I think, by Brad Treliving. But despite that, we're still going to give it our best shot to answer these questions from the Athletics. So why don't we bring up the survey, and let's just get things started here, Dave. So if you bring it up here, how many questions is there? There's a few, actually. There's a whole bunch of questions. But we'll start here with roster building. And they're giving you a ranking 1 to 5, 1 being not confident, 5 being very confident. So, Dave, I'll let you start here. In terms of roster building, where do you sit here when you're ranking 1 to 5 with Brad Treliving and his ability to build up a roster?
I'm going to go with 4.
Okay.
I'm more confident that he's not thinking about taking the home run shot, going after like one guy in free agency. He's like, you know what? Let's spread it out. Let's fill in a few needs. You know, the Bertuzzi signing, the Domi signing, bringing in Klingberg, getting the depth goaltender with Martin Jones. Like, he's thinking more about filling out, you know, not just getting, you know, the value cheaper players. He's looking to say, okay, we needed to augment certain parts of the lineup. We may have to spend a little bit to get there, but I think he's really truly understanding the need to fill around the core 4 a little bit more with this free agency.
How long will they be the core 4? And that's probably something that we'll continue to get into as we progress through this survey. But I'll agree for now. I'm more like a 3.5, but for the sake of picking one for us to submit here to the good people at the Athletic, we'll stick with the 4. But I think it's you look at what he built in Calgary, despite not having a great season last year. You look at the drafting, the development, and the team building, the way that he was able to bring in free agents. You just look at the way he built that roster. That was a good roster on paper. It didn't turn out to be a good season, but it was a solid roster. So I'm hoping that he can bring, some similar, stability to the Maple Leafs. Hopefully he can make some trades, some signings, and also draft and develop a little bit better. So I'm going to stick with a 4 here, but I'm more of a 3.5. We'll see. Still TBD in a way. Cap management is the second thing that we get to rank here. So again, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not confident, 5 being very confident. How do you feel about the Leafs' cap management?
Well, it depends on how you feel about the way that they've always found a way to be in the cap, but maybe not balancing the cap, like how they manage it. I'm kind of in the middle here. Like, I don't think they do a great job. I also don't think they do a piss poor job, as maybe some people think, because they have found ways to make this cap work and have a competitive team each and every year despite how heavy top loaded their cap structure is, right? So that's why I'm kind of like, it's good, not great, but it's not terrible.
Look, I think that Dube has put them in a bit of cap, I would say cap hell. Like, he's done a good job of managing the cap once, he put himself in the position after he gave all that money to the core four. He's done a good job the last few years through the pandemic with the flat cap to try and build the best team he possibly can with as little resources or as little cap flexibility. But if you look at what we saw happen this offseason in the cap management, he signed some pretty solid players. And, he let some guys go. And you look at what, the guys like Justin Hall and Nola Chari and, some of the deals that were taken by some of the guys who left. And you think to yourself, I probably wouldn't have done that. Would they have given 4 years to Ryan O'Reilly? Probably wouldn't have done that either. So they let the right guys walk because they weren't willing to match what was out there. And in the end, they were patient, and they ended up getting a couple of bargain players, right? They got Domi at $3 million. They ended up getting Tyler Bertuzzi at $5.5 million, both just on 1-year deals. So they're managing that cap, knowing that next season they may have to spend up to retain both Nylander and Austin Matthews. So he was willing to play within the parameters of, okay, we got this much money this year. Let's figure out a way to get it done. And then, of course, got to give some love to our guy, Brandon Pridham, who's just a cap wizard. Like, they're still over the cap right now. We know this, but I have no worries that this team is going to get themselves under the cap by the time that they have to come the start of the league here. So I'm actually very confident in the way that this team manages the cap. So I'm a 5 out of 5 when it comes to cap management for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I think like they do a good job of making sure they manage it. I just think that seeing how they have done the cap structure has put them in positions where, yeah, they're over the cap now, and it's not going to get easier for them down the road. So, like, I think maybe for this sake, let's split the difference here and go 4 out of 5.
That works for me. We'll give them a 4 out of 5. We will split the difference. And before we get into the next sector here, I do want to tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors. It's Birddogs. Birddogs make you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, but give you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. Birddogs uses anti-stink, anti-sweat wicking fabric that keeps it cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl or enter the promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnhl or promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your bird dogs off, we promise. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We are a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast bringing you Leafs news 365. We don't go away in the offseason. You still want the news. We're here to give it to you. So hopefully you are subscribed to the Locked On Leafs pod as we do. We're on the road to 5K subs. We're so close to 4K. We want to try and get to 5K as quick as possible. We're going to be doing a giveaway at that point. And really quickly, too, before we continue on with this, we mentioned on yesterday's show, if you missed it, we're considering, I think what we're going to do, we just got to figure out the details, but like a March Madness-esque bracket throughout training camp to try and come up with the next goal song for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We talked about how it's a new era, it's a new guy in charge in Brad Treliving. There's got to be a new goal song. We can't come into this year with Hall & Oates again. So let us know in the comment section down below your thoughts and maybe a suggestion or two to what the new goal song should be that we can add to our bracket, which we're going to do throughout training camp. We'll get more details in December, and you guys are going to vote on them, not us. You guys are going to make the votes, and collectively, the Locked On Leafs family will come up with what we believe should be the next goal song for the Toronto Maple Leafs. With that said, let's continue with today's podcast and our topic, and that's, taking a look at our NHL front office confidence survey at The Athletic. We already went through and graded the roster building We gave them a 4 out of 5. We're fairly confident in the way that Brad Treliving can build a roster. And cap management, we gave them a 4 out of 5 as well. Pretty confident that they can manage the cap going forward. Drafting and developing is the next section here. 1 to 5. What's your confidence level in the Maple Leafs' ability to draft and develop?
It used to be high. Now it's gone down.
Did it used to be high? Walk me through it. When did it used to be high?
It used to be high when they were able to get guys like, Liljegren, even like, drafting Marner. There was decisions to make about whether to take Marner or to take other guys, right? Like,
yeah. I like, is it so much like when you're drafting in the top 10, is that so much drafting and developing? Like when I think of drafting and developing, if I'm ranking them, like I'm almost nearly excluding those top 10 picks. Like,
well, Nylander needs to be drafted and developed, right? Like that wasn't a straight draft and he was playing in the NHL. There was a path for him that they actually did the right thing in what they did with him, right? So like that, it was kind of like that era where they didn't have really a lot of the, like, I get what you're saying, like with Matthews and Marner, those guys were NHL pretty much right away, and it's almost like hard not to draft them. But I see like other players and how they have done the right thing with like Liljegren, with Nylander, Sandin to some degree, right? With how they didn't throw him into the NHL right away. They let him take some time to develop. So it used to be high, but it's low for me. It's been low for me for the last few years. Like the only pick I've really liked the last few years has been the only one that I see a lot of promise in. That's Matthew Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm low on it as well, but I've been low on it for a very long time. Like in my opinion, I mean, yes, I guess that's taking away from them hitting on their top 10 picks, but like it's a top 10 pick, you should hit on those. But they're not hitting enough on late round picks, like the day 2 picks. Outside of Matthew Nyes, they really, outside of the first round, haven't been able to get a whole lot out of their draft picks. Pontus Holmberg has kind of come alive in the last year. Technically, I believe, well, Engvall came through the system, I suppose. Now they got Bobby McMahon potentially, but they're not developing these high-end players. It's because they're not drafting anyone who's really hitting like that, right? Maybe Matthew Nyes can become that, but to me, like I'm waiting for them to find that second, third, fourth round, fifth round pick that becomes a stud. Just they develop him well, and he just kind of something clicks, and all of a sudden it's, oh, that was a great find in the 4th round, a diamond in the rough. They developed them properly, and just haven't really seen it. They've been very much tweener guys that they've been able to develop, both on the blue line and up in the forward ranks. I guess Joseph Wall, again, but he's a guy who we don't know exactly what he's going to become. But there just hasn't been enough hits, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's not a 1. Like, I don't have zero confidence in the way that this team has been drafting and developing. But I probably would give it a – I probably would give it a 2.
Yeah, I think a 2 is fair. Like, but they just got ranked 27th by, like, their prospect pool was just ranked 27th by the Athletic. Like,
well, where's Calgary ranked? Because now we're in a situation, and the thing is, like, the Leafs scouts were holdovers from Kyle Dubas, so like it's basically still the same guys that were taking part in this past draft. I will be curious to see if Treliving brings in, his own guys, right? I will be curious to see how different things are this season, and if he can bring in some other scouts that he's worked with in the past, and maybe reshape the scouting room a little bit in the amateur ranks. Potentially that could become a thing. So it's a little early, I guess, to be grading the drafting and developing of this current front office, but we'll see.
I'll say this because it's very recent. So they started at the bottom. Boston is number 32, and they've only gone up to 25 in Colorado. Yeah. So the Flames currently rank higher than the Leafs.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to think like where, like the Flames, they got a couple of prospects, but nothing that's you would consider, insanely blue chip, I suppose. But they've been a playoff team for, a few years too. So it's not like they've had incredibly high picks themselves. Not they haven't had many lottery picks over the last few years, at the very least. All right, trading. How do we feel about this team's ability to trade? Where is your confidence level in Brad Treliving's trading abilities, Dave?
Well, you know what? Like, I don't think it's been quite bad. Like, you look at the trades he made in Calgary. Like, they haven't been terrible. Like, I haven't heard like, yeah. So have they all hit? No, but I think he's found ways to make good deals and not put Calgary in terrible positions. And like even Dubas wasn't terrible at trades. I thought, a lot of the things he needed to get done, he found creative ways to get it done.
Let me just make before you get flamed in the comments. We do need to acknowledge the Huberdeau Kachuk trade that he did make,
Yes.
and how that didn't necessarily work out as well as he had hoped, but it wasn't a bad trade, right? If you go back to when the trade was made, a lot of people actually thought Treliving fleeced Florida. And then Kachuk went on to have a terrific year. And obviously, Huberdeau, I don't know what the hell happened to Huberdeau. Sutter hated him. They were butting heads all the time. He didn't see much ice time. And he went from a 115-point player to like a 55-point player. It was insane, the drop-off that we saw from Huberdeau. But still, for him to be able to get that big of a return, I think does say, this guy definitely knows how to get things done and make some trades. Also getting Mackenzie Weegar in that deal as well. Look, I
too, though, about that trade. Like, it's not like it wasn't a one season and all trade. Like, Huberdeau has a chance to turn things around in Calgary. He's there pretty sure he signed an 8-year deal, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah,
there is time. There is time for him to turn things around. Yeah, Kachuk is the better player, no doubt about it. You weren't going to be winning a Kachuk trade in a lot of ways. Like, you weren't going to be getting a Matthew Kachuk in return. So what did he do? He got pieces he felt were going to keep the Flames competitive.
Right, exactly. I'm just looking back to see if he's made any other sizable deals. A lot of them have been kind of, peripheral type trades, trade away Sam Bennett and brought in, pick and a prospect. I remember he did bring in Tyler Toffoli a couple of years ago as well from the Montreal Canadiens. So there's some deals that have been made. Zadorov, he brought in for a 3rd-round pick. So he's made some trades in the past that have definitely panned out. I would say a veteran of the NHL like Brad Treliving, I'm pretty confident that this guy can get things done. I'd give it a 4.
Okay, yeah. Like, and another trade I wanted to bring up was he brought Lindholm and Hanifin to Calgary.
That's right.
Ferland, Dougie Hamilton, Adam Fox. None of those players remain on the Carolina Hurricanes today, and all those players remain on Calgary and are decent contributors on Calgary.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good players. They just don't happen to be in Carolina. But Adam Fox went on to be a Norris Trophy guy. Dougie Hamilton, you could argue, is a Norris Trophy caliber player. Yeah, but I totally, he deserves credit for swinging that deal and making it happen. Absolutely. So yeah, he's not afraid to make a trade. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll take one more quick break, Dave. When we get back, we'll get to the final. We got 2 or 3 categories left. 3 categories left. We'll get to them on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. If you are new to the program, we appreciate you giving us a shot. Hopefully you enjoy what you are watching or listening to, depending on how you are consuming the podcast. But just a reminder, it's available wherever you get your podcast from audio-wise and also up on YouTube as well. We'd appreciate if you guys did subscribe if you're enjoying this. And if you are already subscribed and you join us each and every day, you're one of our everydayers. We appreciate you so much. Let's continue, Dave, with our confidence ranking with the Maple Leafs front office via the Athletics poll here. So let's take a look at free agency now. Again, we're ranking everything from 1 to 5, 1 being not at all confident, 5 being very confident. So what's your confidence level ranking with the Maple Leafs and Brad Treliving when it comes to him operating free agency?
I think a 4. Like, I thought the moves he made, he wasn't very active on day one, but he sat back and he let other teams make deals, and he's like, Bertuzzi, Domi, Klingberg one is the one where you're like,
stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
I can't give him a 4. I cannot give him a 4.
Oh, because of the Ryan Reeves deal?
Ryan Reeves, and I'm also Klingberg is also a very questionable deal for me as well. So when I look at what he did in free agency, kind of hated what he did in July 1, really liked what he did on July 2. So I'm not going to give him a 1, obviously, but I can't give him a 5. I think I can only allow us to give him as high as a 3.
Okay.
I think that's as high as I'd be willing to go because, again, you look at what happened 2 seasons ago. He let Johnny Gaudreau walk via free agency, right? He let TJ Brody years ago walk via free agency. He let a bunch of guys walk over the course. Now he's been able to lure guys in. I get that. I understand that. But I'm looking at what's happening right now with the Maple Leafs and also their history of walking guys to free agency. And again, there's 2 more players that are currently sitting there. How confident are you that both those guys are coming back? I can't say 5 out of 5 that they'll both be back. So 3.
I wouldn't
can't
agree with everything he's done in free agency, that's for sure. I just think that he didn't go out and make, other than like the Reeves deal, like Klingberg, that's a wait and see sort of deal, right? Because he had a bad year last year, but we also know the type of player he can be if he's in the right.
Dude. We're like, there's an article. Maybe we can get into this a little bit tomorrow. I don't know if you saw it. Travis Yost of TSN.ca put out an article about how much this guy's game has fallen off the last couple of years. And it's fallen off a cliff and quick. So unless he gets it back on the rails, it's going to be a tough season for the Maple Leafs and for John Klingberg, specifically in his own zone.
That's fair. All right, so let's do. I'll do a 3.
Okay,
like I'm pretty okay with that.
Division. How do you feel about the division?
This is a tough one because like it's only been a few months, right? We don't. The confidence only gets higher if they get these if they can deal with the Matthews and Nylander stuff with a little pain and unneeded drama as possible.
Do you believe in the vision though? Like we were both quite shocked at what happened this offseason when Kyle Dubas was let go and Sheldon Keefe remained.
I think there should be more of a Brendan Shanahan question than a Brad Treliving question. Because
it was Treliving. Yeah, but Treliving is like he's kind of the face, especially when it comes to the coach. Like he's the one who said, "I got to figure it out with the coach. I got to sit down with Sheldon. I got to figure it out." And for all intents and purposes, it sounds as though he liked what he heard from Sheldon, and he had the final say and was like, "All right, I like it. Let's keep it rolling, keep it going." Right? He has said multiple times as well, he likes the core 4 and it's immense talent that they've got accumulated there. He probably does not want, has said that he doesn't want to move these guys for the sake of moving these guys, for the sake of making a change. So the vision that I would say he has is one that Shanahan shares. And it's different from what I would say we were advocating for back in June before all the turnover happened. Am I off base? Am I wrong?
We were thinking that there could have been significant change, whether it was behind the bench or whether it was with one of the core 4 going. I just think Treliving has kind of done in his best way possible, kind of calm, like trying to extinguish as many fires as possible. right? He's trying to bring calm back. Now, I get why he didn't move away from Keefe. It makes sense because you got a coach who has proven through the regular season he is a good coach. Obviously, playoffs has been a different story. So I can get why he didn't want to make that move right away, because obviously there wasn't an obvious candidate out there where you say, like, Keefe should be out and this guy should come in. Like, I couldn't give an obvious name, in my opinion, right? You look at the coaches that were brought in, there wasn't really one that I said, the Leafs really missed an opportunity to grab this coach, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure.
So there was that. It's the core 4-1 that I'm really curious about, because this is still something that I don't know where exactly it's going. We know they want to keep Austin Matthews. That we know. Nylander, we weren't he's not willing to give away anyone for free, but he didn't give like a stern commitment to Nylander either, in my opinion.
I would imagine he wants to keep Nylander, but at the right price.
Exactly.
Right? Like, he's got a number, and if Nylander wants more, like, sorry, pal, you're not priority number one here. So get to stepping. I would assume. But I don't know. I feel like the vision.
It's a tough one for me to give a good high.
What do you think is the identity of this team?
I still think they want to be a skilled team. He said he wants this team to play with a little more bite, a little more snot. So I do like he's recognizing there's elements this team is missing, not just grabbing. I mean, the Reeves one is a different, obviously that's a depth player, fourth liner. But he's like, I'm not just going to grab a bunch of fourth liners. I'm going to get someone that's going to play in your top six and be a little more nasty in a Bertuzzi, right? Like, I like that idea that he's not just getting, Kyle Dubas, when he was bringing in toughness, was bringing in guys that aren't going to be playing enough to really have as much of an impact as you'd want them to have.
Right.
In that regard, I'm a little more confident in that. At the same time, it's the core 4 that still remains the biggest one for me, right? Like, are we married too much to this core 4, and is that going to impact the vision moving forward? So that's why I'm in the 3. Like, I'm not saying I'm not confident, but I'm also not ready to sing Brad Treliving's praises just yet. It's because we haven't seen his vision come into full effect, because he's only been for a few months.
Yeah, I'll sign off on a 3. I'll go with you, and I think we could give it a 3. Like, we still got to see what the vision is ultimately, and how much it's changed or how much it will change over the course of the year. All right, final one here, Dave. How has your confidence in the team's front office changed in the last year? It's pretty much what we just talked about. And the Leafs are in a unique situation where they did have turnover in the front office this past offseason. So are you more confident, less confident, or has there been no change in confidence with the direction of this Maple Leafs under Treliving than you did a year ago under Kyle Dubas?
It's going to be a no change, because I can't say I'm more confident in Treliving or less confident. I get that's the one for me. Right?
I want to be optimistic. I really, really do. I'm a little less confident.
Okay.
And this it does go back to, I really felt this team needed some sort of change and shakeup, and Dubas wasn't the guy who needed to change. He wasn't the guy who needed to go. And unfortunately, it looks as though you look at all the main characters in the story from last year, they're all returning except Dubas. They've made one change to the script. Is it enough to change the ending? I don't know. I really do not know. But what I do know is it sounded as though Dubas was willing to make some change to the team, and that's kind of where things were butting heads. And I'm just not sure. Again, I could be wrong. They could go out and have a much better season. They go out and win the Stanley Cup this year, and I'll eat my words. But as of now, just because I haven't seen this team in action yet, I suppose. So I could change my mind 2 months from now. But I did feel like this team needed a little bit more of a upheaval of some kind, a change, whether that was at the coach or one of the core 4 players. And we didn't get either of those. Instead, it was the GM who went. And for that reason, I do feel a little less confident in this front office.
What if Dubas was still here, but everything kind of stayed the same?
I don't think that would be the case. I would say less confident then. If he once again, if everyone tried to run it back the exact same way like they did in the last 2 years, keep knocking, we're so close, we keep knocking, eventually we're gonna bust the door down, and then they remain just steadfast on keeping the team and the core, we can and we will with this group, but year in, year out, they keep losing. I would say that I'd be less confident in the group still. Yeah. Like I feel the same way, regardless that there's been change in the front office, there's been change on the ice. And that's why ultimately I think I have less confidence, because I believe there should have been more change on the ice with this group.
Okay. No, that's a fair point. There is one more page. These are just the comments section. So this is more personal, but okay.
Well,
If you had any personal comments for your favorite team's front office, please leave them here. I mean, you kind of just said it. Like, there wasn't enough change made other than the wrong change, in your opinion, with Kyle Dubas not being brought back. Yeah. What was the best decision made by this front office?
I would say Tyler Bertuzzi.
Yeah, bringing in Tyler Bertuzzi and letting Michael Bunting, not bringing back Michael Bunting. Michael Bunting could go out and have a good season, but I just think where that situation led to, I don't know if the Leafs would have been able to rein him back in, especially with the spotlight was on him.
So what do you think was a better decision, actually? Going out and aggressively, well, I wouldn't even say it was aggressive. They got him at a pretty reasonable deal, but going out and getting Tyler Bertuzzi signed, or realizing that, letting all these other guys walk, like Luke Schenn, who signed a big deal. They let Justin Hall, who signed a big deal, walk. Ryan O'Reilly, all these guys, Michael Bunting. Or was it a better decision to let all those guys walk as opposed to compete? Maybe that was it. The best decision by the front office was to let their overpriced free agents walk.
Yeah, I think that probably was it. Imagine all those. It would have been a very different team if they said, let's bring Schenn back. Well, that number doesn't really work for us. All right, let's bring Ryan O'Reilly back. His game has kind of fallen down a bit. We can't expect to give him that type of commitment. So, yeah, I think that was probably between that and what that allowed them to do by not competing with those offers. It allowed them to go with more short-term, bet on yourself type of players. And these guys are now have to really, really push for their next contract, and that's only going to help the Leafs.
Yeah, so you can write that in for best decision made.
Letting high price free agents walk.
Yes. And then the worst decision made by this front office
is Ryan Reeves.
Ryan Reeves. 3 years to Ryan Reeves.
Not enough change on ice with Poppers. Right. And we submit.
There we go. You're welcome, The Athletic, for our response. I look forward to seeing what the
rest of you think. Or the rest of the Athletic readers think, I should say.
Yes. And if you are a part of The Athletic, you can go and you could go take the confidence survey as well. But that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasting platforms to receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. By the way, Friday is Fan Friday. So reach out to us if you want to be on the show. We're looking for one fan of the Locked On Leafs podcast to join us to chat Leafs. So let us know. Get a hold of us somehow, whether it's in the Discord or it's online or in the comment section down below. Let us know, and we'll get one of you guys on the show on Friday. So back another episode for y'all then. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.